Hi, everybody.
Look at you and your makeup.
Of course. I'm just so happy I could put it on now.
Yeah. It's kind of nice to see your freckles, though.
Oh, I don't have that many. I don't really have any freckles until I've been out in the sun. Then I get some. Hi, Ron and Debbie.
Hey, how are you?
Good. How are you guys?
Good, thanks.
Good.
So good to see you.
Absolutely.
Getting everybody in here.
Great series, Pauline or Claudine. Great
Yes,
series.
it was really good. It was very
Don't call
good.
her Pauline. She might
I
smack
know.
you.
I'm getting confused.
She doesn't like Pauline.
Oh no. Well, I put Pauline above Mary. So Mary is I can't stand her. Mary's the worst.
Okay.
I thought Mary looked similar to Martha too, in a little bit in looks,
A little bit, yeah.
but temperament's probably different.
Yes. I see Carol. Hey, Carol.
Hello, how are you?
And
Good. So good to
Great.
see everybody.
I
So
just
I know that
finished
some-
that series this afternoon.
Yeah, I saw some people, I saw Danielle was saying that she didn't finish it. I had that same problem. I kept falling asleep every night in the watching it. So I'd have to catch up the next day on it.
Yeah.
That's what I did. I watched during the day.
I got 2 of them done. I still have to watch number 3.
Yeah. Yeah. It was good. I had a few issues with some of the things. It just I think for me, it just seemed like it's kind of skewed to a little bit of a negative
Very much
slant
so.
on it a little bit. Which, I was actually more surprised about the things that they left out in a lot of the stories than the things that they put in. I was like, why didn't you say this? Or why didn't you talk about this? And there was a few things that they left out that kind of paints him to look a little worse. And that kind of bothered me too.
I thought the same thing. I thought, wow, they made him sound so nasty and bullyish, and I didn't really feel like that was a true portrayal of him.
Yeah. I mean, he was no
saint.
Problem. Yeah.
No, of course
he was no
not,
saint and he wasn't perfect, but in the third one, when they talked about Gertrude Stein and saying that, he wrote things about her in Movable Feast. Well, Gertrude Stein in 1930s threw the first punch in the autobiography of Alice B. Toklas. She said horrible things about him and Picasso, and he and Picasso never wanted to talk to her again. But Ken Burns, they didn't say that. They just said, he said these horrible things about Gertrude Stein, but it's not a tit for tat, but still at the same time, it was like, but it wasn't completely out of left field at the same time.
Right.
Do you think the family had any say-so in what was portrayed and what they covered? And I'm assuming some of those movies had to be their home movies.
Yeah, I mean, I know that they worked a lot with the JFK Museum, because that's where they kind of have a Hemingway museum there, and they have a lot of his, they have his papers and photos and stuff like that. I would assume that they would have to get some sort of permission for some of the things, but I'm not sure. I saw somebody say online that they wish that, all the literary scholars they kind of wish that they gave them some sort of said where they were, like, what college they were from or what books they wrote or something. Cause I'd love to go on and just say literary scholar underneath my name.
Yeah.
I wondered who those people were, because I didn't recognize names. I don't know if you guys did among the scholars.
Me neither.
No.
Okay. And I thought I'll look them up. But they were interesting. I've only watched part 1.
Yeah, they were really interesting. I really like that woman, O'Brien.
The brogue.
Yeah,
With
and
the
every
Irish
time she
accent.
was talking, and when she was talking over the photos, I was like, Is that Martha? Is she supposed to be Martha? Because it sounded, she had such an interesting voice. And then she was kind of talking over the
Speaking of
photos. So it
Martha's
was like,
voice.
is she one of the voiceovers? So
Speaking of Martha's voice, honey, that is not a St. Louis accent. I don't know where she got that accent
that was
from.
Meryl Streep.
No. When Martha was talking,
But Meryl Streep
was
is
from
Martha.
Oh,
I
wow.
thought
I didn't know
there was a section where I thought they were interviewing Martha.
They
Oh.
did
Was-
show
or
it.
was I
Oh,
mistaken?
yes. Sorry.
Yeah, and that was she was trying to do some put on British something because she didn't sound anything like anybody from St. Louis. I'll tell you that right now.
Well, she lived in London for the last years of her life, like for a couple of
Okay.
decades. So maybe
Okay,
she,
so she probably did adopt some of it. Okay,
yeah,
all
she
right. I was
probably
like, where
picked
did
up
that
a
come
little of
from?
it. I've noticed that my cousin lives in England, and she now like has all of a sudden has this British accent, which it's pretty funny.
I was like, St. Louis? That is not there's nowhere near St. Louis.
Yeah. But I thought it was like the, with the photos and the music and the, Peter Coyote, his voice, you could just kind of put it on and listen to that forever. It was just so soothing
Yeah.
and nice.
Yeah.
Do you know whether or not they recovered any of his estate from Cuba?
I was going to
Well-
ask the same thing.
Everything was just left there.
Right.
Right.
But were they ever able to recover any of that? And was the estate that they were actually showing that was in Cuba in this triple, we watched all of the
Yeah.
episodes.
Yeah.
Was that the real estate?
Yeah.
And did they actually, was anybody able to recover anything from the estate?
I know at one point they went down there because they went down there to get the painting, Miro's The Farm. That is such a big, has its own big, huge story in itself because of what Mary did and kind of screwing over Hadley. But I know that they went down there to get some of that stuff. And I read one time that a lot of it was damaged just because of the humidity and the bugs and stuff in a lot of his books. So I'm sure that some of the stuff that's in the house, like the all the books and stuff, some of those have been replaced. But because he basically, they just like up and left,
Right.
when
Yeah.
it was so they didn't get to take a whole lot of stuff with them.
So I wonder if
think
it's
if from what I've
museum.
seen, they've redone a lot of stuff there and they've reopened it as a museum that I think you could go if you have, a reservation. And some of those pictures, like there was one shot that they kept showing that was like looking out the window with the palm trees. They showed it multiple times. It was such a beautiful shot.
And I love the music they use down in
Yeah.
Cuba.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was really good. I thought I just thought all the photos and but I think my very favorite part of the whole thing was when they interviewed Sylvia Beach.
Oh, yeah.
And they had that video of her like, and then he just came down the street. She was so cute. She was so cute. I recorded it with my phone because I was like, I just need to save this. It was so
And he
adorable.
picked me up and swirled me around.
She was so cute. So adorable.
She was adorable.
Yeah, I was like, we need more Sylvia. More Sylvia.
What year do you think that was recorded?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I mean,
I don't
it
even
probably
remember
was-
when she died.
it was
Oh,
probably in
let's
the
see.
I would say it was probably
50s,
50s. Yeah.
late
in the
50s, eh?
because she was just but it was so cute. She was just absolutely adorable. I was like, I just want to keep watching that.
Do you know if
passed away in
PBS would sell
62.
it?
What was that, Jenny?
Do you know if PBS would sell a copy of that series?
I know I saw that I saw it actually in this one group I'm in that it said that the BBC was going to show it I think next month. So I think
It'll
I
probably
think
be
it'll-
available online, I'm guessing. PBS usually does like online sell.
Yeah, that's where actually I was watching it the last when I had to rewatch it. I was watching it on the PBS app, and they actually had
Okay.
all 3 episodes on it on Monday. So had I really been ahead of it, I could have watched them all in advance, but that didn't happen.
Yeah, I looked up real quick. Sylvia died in 62,
Yeah,
so it
all
was
by
obviously
herself.
prior to that.
All
Yeah.
by herself. They did. She died, and they took took days she had been dead for a few days before anybody
Oh.
found her, which
Oh,
is
dear.
so heartbreaking.
Well, and
Did she
they
die
must
in
have been working
Paris?
on,
Are any of his sons still alive?
Only one,
Peter, right?
Patrick.
Patrick.
And he was in the video. He
Like
was in the show.
92.
Yeah,
92.
Patrick's still alive, but Jack Bumby, he died during complications of a surgery. And then Gregory, of course, he died in 2001, I think it was. He died. He had kind of, they showed some stuff about him in the show. He had kind of a sad life, confusing life. He was kind of a lost. He was a kind of a lost one. Medical school, then didn't want to do that, and all of he just kind of couldn't find his road.
Well, and then the guilt that his dad put on him for, you killed your mother.
Yeah. Well, and
Oh,
he actually, because he had gone to medical school, he ended up getting his mom's medical records and looked into it, and it was just a fluke timing. It just was, it didn't really have anything to do with that. But because he had medical training, he went back and looked at all the medical records and found out that actually, wasn't the case. But just horrible timing, horrible.
Yeah.
But it was, that the whole thing about, the TV show was, it was basically underneath the title of Hemingway. It said the myth, it was the myth something. And that's the thing. I mean, it's always been I think the myth of him is even bigger than who he is himself. And, I think that, he tried to create this myth. And then later, and still to this day, I see it all the time with people that are like infatuated with him. And, they still keep creating and adding to this myth more and more. And they, basically, excuse me, they look at like everything he's ever written as like gospel. And it's like the truth. Like he said this, but he changed things all the time. I mean, a lot of things in Movable Feast, the whole part in Movable Feast about going to Saint Sulpice and praying, because he was having issues in the bedroom. That didn't happen in Paris. That happened in Cuba. Like he was in Cuba and he went to a church. So, he changed things, all the time. But I think, the myth that he created in the end is why he killed himself, because he couldn't live up to that myth. He couldn't write. He couldn't, he's having so many problems, and it's hard. It's so heartbreaking. It's always heartbreaking. And I thought that they were very light with the way they talked about the end of his life and his death. It just kind of was like, okay, he was in the Mayo Clinic and then now this and now and then he killed himself. But it had to be insanely hard for him for being, the writer and being able to do all that to get to a point where you can't do it, you can't write, you can't get things out of, you can't get things out of your head. It's just so sad.
And what did the family think that Mary left the keys on purpose?
I don't know. She actually, after he died, she for quite a few weeks said that it was an accident, that the whole thing was an accident. And so she went with that story for quite a while until she finally later said, she agreed that he killed himself. But I don't know. I mean, I think that's so interesting because you would think why, I mean, he already tried once. He already took a shotgun. Just a few months before that, he tried to do it. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I sure as heck wouldn't, I think I would probably like sleep with them in my bra. Like you're not going to get anywhere near these keys. So, I don't know. Mary, she's definitely not my favorite, but I don't know. It's just that's a really interesting question for sure.
Well, it couldn't have been easy living with him either.
No, especially at that point. I mean,
especially when the Italian girl came and then he was all excited.
Yeah. And he just definitely, the more he got depressed, the angrier he would get, which is understandable because he's, had this thing and, he's had this thing his whole life of being, a writer and a great writer. and now that's just going away, which is
Well,
just,
and he built his myth and he
Yeah.
helped to build the myth, and then his myth came crashing down
Yeah.
also.
yeah,
We were joking about the fact that in Midnight in Paris,
Yeah.
the character Hemingway
Mhm.
hits on Adriana,
yes,
Who was in,
who was the young Italian girl he was
Yeah.
actually chasing after to try to replace
Yeah.
Mary with.
yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Very
Yeah, and that's,
interesting.
that's another thing that goes, kind of goes with the myth. The actor that played Hemingway in Midnight in Paris, he was a fantastic. It was amazing. But Hemingway didn't sound like that. And when you watch the show and you hear him talking, he's not talking like, well, what. And so, but that's adding again to this myth, like now Woody Allen's doing that. And then next thing you know, Oliver G is doing this walking tour in Paris with some guy that's now talking just like the guy in Paris. So it's like,
yeah,
it's
Yeah.
kind of like this it's like, oh, like sometimes it just kind of drives me crazy. It's like, that's not how he was, or, but it sounds cool. I mean, they made his voice like his writing. They made him sound like
Yes.
his
Right.
writing.
Yeah.
And when
So-
they did that interview with him after he had won the Nobel Peace
Yeah.
Prize, and for literature, and then they did that interview where he couldn't even speak in public.
No,
Or
that was so
Yeah,
sad
it's
just to watch it.
sad. He was
Comma,
reading
yeah,
the
comma,
commas,
period.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was heartbreaking. That was really heartbreaking to watch. And I'm
Yeah,
sure at that point there
exactly.
was already all of the concussions and brain damage that he had over time added to that situation. It was just really sad.
Yeah,
But
I
it's
was
fun.
just gonna
But he
ask you
had the
that.
therapy by then too, right? That was after the therapy.
Yeah, he had the electric shock therapy, which is
Right.
sounds just that in and of it. I mean, do they even
Brutal.
do they even do
Brutal.
that anymore? I mean, it's such a
They do.
horrible thing.
Yes,
But yeah,
but they
he had
knocked-
that twice.
Yeah,
What
they
they
knocked.
what they do is much more specialized than
No.
stuff they used to do back then. Obviously, they're much more precise.
Yeah. Ugh.
I was struck because I only watched the first episode and I will watch the others. But they were saying that out of his own family and siblings, the 8 people, 4 of them had committed
Mhm.
suicide.
Yeah.
I mean, that
Yeah. It's
Uh,
pretty
it-
it's pretty-
Claudine, I was doing some looking up earlier today, and it's something that struck me. Again, this is a Wikipedia thing, but I'll put it say it at that. But that they said that his father and him and the other ones may have had basically what it amounts to an excessive iron levels,
Hmm.
which could cause. It's a hereditary thing. It's called a hemochromatosis. And the excessive iron accumulates in the mental and physical deterioration.
Huh.
So if that is true, that's an addition to
Yeah.
the concussions and the electroshock therapy
Yeah.
and everything else. Yeah.
Well, maybe when I'm having my blood taken so many times right now, I better have them check my iron.
Everything. My mother-in-law just got diagnosed with high potassium. So
Yeah.
it's all kinds of crazy
Yeah.
things.
It could
Yeah.
maybe hopefully it didn't stretch this far down in the family line, but yeah, it was
Yeah, hopefully not.
he definitely like they kept saying about how he always, he wasn't afraid of death. But I think maybe he, I think that maybe he was a little bit, just because of how at the end, I mean, he, took it into his own hands, but still, he, I think as he got older, it was a little different. It's easy to not be afraid of death when you're 20 years old, when you feel like you're invincible and that's a long ways away. It's a little bit different when he was quite a bit older, and and the thing was like, they were also talking about it in the end of the third about, his paranoia and how he thought people were watching him. Well, then it came out later that they actually were, like the FBI had this huge file on him and they actually were watching him.
Oh.
So,
It's just
but
files
they
on
didn't say that.
everybody.
They didn't mention that.
Didn't he also, with him not being afraid of death, I mean, that was in his mind proven to him when he was in the First World War, and he was hit with all the shrapnel and he was shot, and
Yeah.
and he survived it all. So he must be he must lead a charmed life,
Yeah.
with all of that.
And you
He
wonder,
sure
like,
did
you know,
he sure
how
did
long would
beat
he have
death
lived?
many times with as many places and 2 plane accidents within a week. And
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just amazed at how many
Yeah.
times he just did
Cheated
not.
death a lot, but you know, you
Just
kind of
like
wonder
his
how
dad.
long, you know,
Why
I wonder
not?
how long he would have lived
Yeah, me too. I
had he
wonder
not
this.
done that. I mean, he
Mm.
was already in the 60s, which isn't, you
But
know,
in
which
what
isn't old at
condition?
all.
That's not old.
Yeah, that's not old at all. So, you know, hopefully he would have
His
made it to, you know,
condition
80
was
or 90
such.
years old, and who knows, but I think,
Oh, but his liver would have been
oh
shot.
yeah,
It
Oh,
was
yeah.
already,
I mean,
yeah.
yeah,
He
his
already had liver
his
problems.
liver was definitely probably screaming for help.
Yeah.
That was definitely, you know, that and the electric shock therapy and the concussions, you put all that stuff together and it's not a good outcome by far.
Because
Pretty
now
sad.
isn't Patrick in his 80s?
Yeah, Patrick's
92.
pretty old.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that's what a healthy guy would have
Yeah, yeah.
been.
Right.
By
I mean,
probably-
that's gotta be
yeah.
hard. I mean, none of the, you know, none of his stepmoms, you know, his dad died, none of his stepmoms are around, you know, he, none of his brothers are gone.
Is
So
he as nice as he seems?
yeah, I mean, anything I've ever seen about him, he's always seems so gentle and so sweet and just so, you know,
Yeah.
calm. And he's
Mhm.
done a lot of work on the different books, you know, that they've done, how they've done these special editions of the books,
Right.
the library editions. And he does a lot of that. He does a lot of work on those, which is
Huh.
great. And if you ever want to reread any of the, you know, his books, definitely look for the library editions because
Yeah.
they're much better. And like, it's really cool. The Farewell to Arms in the back, it has all like over 40 different versions that he wrote for the ending. So it's really cool to see that and kind of, you see his thought process. And because he was a pack rat, you know, for us, he was a pack rat and saved every single thing. So all of that stuff you saw, you know, all of his manuscripts where he, you know, crossed out and stuff, he just
Yeah.
saved everything. So it's kind of nice that you know, they still have all those and you could see
Yeah.
his handwriting, and that's always
Yeah.
kind of neat.
You know, it's hard to know when people are analyzing artists and writers. One of them mentioned that Cezanne did so many versions of paintings. I'm a painter. And in fact, I told my art students today about this, but they said that they felt that that was an influence on him to see that it was okay to do many ways. I mean,
Yes.
you all heard
Versions. Yeah.
it struck me as an interesting note. And of course, artists do feed off of each
Yeah.
other
Mhm.
across the genre.
Yeah. Well, and that
And
came up
artists-
because Gertrude Stein, he showed Gertrude something that he had written, and she read it, and then she was like, this is horrible. You need to start over. And then she told him, she said, you need to go to the Musée de Luxembourg and you need to go look at the Cezanne paintings. And you need to see how he takes such a simple subject and he tells this story with not a lot of extra things. And so he, you know, he would go to the museum, and he always thought you had to go when you were hungry because you could absorb art more if you're hungry. So he'd go to the museum and he'd go there and he'd look at the Cezanne paintings. And I always, at that time, the Musée de Luxembourg, which if I'm sure those of you that have been to Paris, you've probably been to that museum, such a great small museum. And it's all just special exhibits now. But at the time, it was like the living artist museum.
Oh.
So they would have, you know, because you couldn't be in the Louvre. So they would have, you know, the living artists and they'd have their paintings there. And so most of those paintings then went into the Orsay when the Orsay opened. And so I've always gone in there and looked at the Cezanne and like looked at it because I was like, I want to be standing in front of the same one that he was looking at. I want to see that one. But
Did you go hungry?
I think there's only one of them in there because other ones came at different times and, you know, they came in after he would have seen it. So my grand vision of, you know, standing in this whole gallery was squashed. Yeah, but that's such a, you know, Gertrude did, you know, that was one thing that Gertrude helped him with, was really pinpointing, narrowing down his writing a little bit more. So, you know, when Hadley lost all those manuscripts, I think as horrible as that was, I don't think, you know, I think that actually helped him because he had to start over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just like any great storyteller, just like a comedian, they try out their jokes and they revise them and work them through. You tell it again, and
Yeah.
so it probably improved it.
Yeah.
But
You
just think that trunk is out there somewhere.
that's what I was gonna say. I was like,
Of unseen material.
could you just imagine somebody finds that someday and if it's, you know, it's probably somebody thought it was like, these are just stupid papers and threw it in the garbage.
Papers
Long
that they
gone.
couldn't make sense of because it was in English. They
Yeah,
were French.
exactly. Totally. Yeah, exactly. Totally.
Maybe he didn't put his name on it.
Yeah. Yeah. His name, he didn't have a name at that point. Like nobody would have, you know, been like, ooh, these
it's
are
Hemingway.
Ernest Hemingway's papers. They would have been like, whatever.
I need this trunk. I'll dump it out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Did anybody else have a favorite little part of it?
Well, one of the things that struck me was in college you studied, you know, writing, creative writing, and the run-on sentences, the huge paragraphs of one sentence, you know, comma splices and all that, and it made his writing who he was. But in today's, or at least in my college years, would have been totally thrown away.
Yeah. I know when he some of his sentences when he uses and like 14 times, like I don't really, when I'm writing, like I never like to use the same word twice in a sentence or even close to one. So it's like then he uses, you know, and the boat and the this and the that and the that, and it's like, oh my gosh, like now nobody would ever write like that.
And he loves the word fine.
Yeah.
That's another thing. He loves to use the word fine, and it was fine.
Yeah.
And we
it
were
was
fine.
Mhm. Yeah, there was definitely certain words. But then he also had those incredibly short sentences, you know, with like 2 words in it.
Yeah. Very precise.
Yeah,
No.
yeah. Yeah.
I love the part, I think it was in the second part where it showed him with all of his children.
Mhm.
And he looked like he was such a loving, doting father at that time. You know, he had his morning routine where he would be writing, and then the afternoon was for his family.
Yeah.
And it was just so touching to me.
And the pictures of him at that time, and I was talking to Coretta about this, we were messaging back and forth, and it was like, he was really hot then. Like he was really handsome. But then I was like, is that creepy for me to say?
No,
You still admire his work.
No, it's
I mean,
okay.
it's like, okay, yeah, you could definitely see during that period of time, you could see where it was like, oh, this is why all the ladies, you know, when he was younger in Paris, he, you know, was still younger. And then at that point, he was all like swashbuckling and, you know, like handsome. And I was like, is it creepy that I'm saying that he's handsome?
No, because we do that about our grandmas too. We say
That's
how
true.
pretty our grandmas were when they were young, and our grandpas were so handsome.
Yes, that's
So,
Sure.
yeah.
I think
But,
in some of the photos, he looks like Burt
Yeah.
Reynolds.
Oh, yeah.
the mustache, yeah.
Oh, the mustache.
Maybe it goes back to that my younger, you know, when I was younger and you saw
Burt
Cannonball
Reynolds
Run and you
phase.
thought Burt Reynolds was handsome.
Right, right.
Well, Carol, your husband has that same mustache.
I know.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Hey, Papa.
He's the Portuguese swashbuckler.
Yeah.
No, it's what I thought of throughout the whole movie, you know, this whole series.
Yeah.
Like I said, we watched all 3. You know, even if I only took half of what they said about him, he was not a very nice man at times.
Yes.
I mean, a lot of times as he got older, you know, when he had his problem with his father committing suicide and then he hated his mother, kind of from there on, he, you know, he just became, I think, one in himself and in self-cultivation, and he built the myth.
Yeah.
And it turned into, you know, not a very nice guy.
Plus, he
Yeah,
had his next wife always.
Always, he had his next wife before him.
Yeah,
well, he couldn't, it's like he couldn't be alone, and he said that
Yeah, you
Right.
couldn't.
he couldn't sleep alone, so he always had to have one, it waiting in the wings, and when Martha was the only one that left him, just like, the beginning, she was the only one that left him, and he was not, happy with that because people didn't leave him. And
He does the
It
leaving.
was just like, no way. But that relationship was doomed from the start because they were just
Yeah,
way
but
too much
Martha was
alike.
her own person, and
Yeah.
she was the only reporter on a D-Day invasion allowed on,
That snuck on.
yeah.
She was amazing. We did an episode about her on the podcast, and her
Yeah.
life is just absolutely she's definitely like, I think I might say that she was my favorite of the four. Everybody is always like Hadley, but I'm like, I don't know. She was just a badass, and just kind of, the
Yeah.
things that she did with her life. I mean, she also has moments of her life that weren't so great, but what she did with her life as a woman at that time was just, amazing. I wouldn't want to do that. I wouldn't want to be like, hey, I'm going to go to war. Like, nope, I wouldn't do. I'm not going to go do that. But she was
Be interesting. What was her parents' background that gave her the confidence to do that?
She's from St. Louis, which is what he really loved to find ladies from St. Louis. But her father was a doctor, and her mother was involved with the suffragettes, and she was like presidents of different like colleges and schools, like whatever school that Martha went to, her mom was the president there, and her father got really mad because at school, when they talked about female anatomy, the school had pasted over the photos of female anatomy. And when her father found that out, he was livid and pulled her out of school. So she was definitely raised in a very different way at that time.
Yeah.
Most
Very
young
open,
girls were,
progressive.
and educated and stuff.
Well,
So
and
I
sh-
think,
And she went to Bryn Mawr.
yes, she went to Bryn Mawr, which is also where Hadley went.
Yeah, and Bryn Mawr
she
was very independent.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she was younger than Hadley, but Hadley actually, there's a book that Hadley, a biography that a friend of hers wrote, which is really interesting. I found one online, and it arrived smelling like it was in a basement for about 20 years. But it was really interesting, and she said that she saw Martha. She remembers seeing Martha, this really cute younger girl with blonde hair. And so it's really interesting that the three of the four wives all kind of revolve around St. Louis.
Yeah.
too.
She was also a good friend of Eleanor Roosevelt's, wasn't she?
Yes. Yeah.
Stayed at
She
the
was
White
living,
House.
she even lived at the White House for a short period. She
That's
stayed there, and then they sent her out to report on about the Depression, and it was after the Depression, and then she got in trouble because there was a office, I think it was like in Idaho or Montana, somewhere like that, and this office didn't that was a government office, they didn't like their boss, so she encouraged them to like trash the office and break the windows and all this stuff, and then when FDR found out, she got fired. But the other funniest thing about it is that when Martha went to Paris early on, she ended up meeting this gentleman who ended up actually being the author Colette's stepson, or it was her husband's son. And Colette had this like multi-year affair with him. And then Martha meets him and has an affair with him. So when I read that, I was like, this is so weird. They're like the way all of the stories of all these people just kind of.
Looks like a small town,
Yeah.
You're bound to have some overlaps.
Yeah. They all go back and forth. Mhm.
Whatever happened to, what was her name? Aggie or the nurse?
The nurse in
Agnes?
World War I.
Yeah, I don't
And-
know. I mean, she said that she was going to marry, she was marrying somebody else. I think I think between his mother and her, that's what screwed him up for women. That those two completely messed him up for women for the rest of his life, because she left him. And I think
Yeah.
that he was like, at that point was like, I'll never be with somebody that, I'll never let somebody leave me again. So I think that's what I think, because he was so head over heels in love with her. And then, I don't know. I mean, I think if somebody was always calling me kid, I might see a red flag there that maybe this isn't going the way I wanted.
I wouldn't mind.
Oh.
I won't call you Papa.
Yeah, maybe now. Yeah, maybe now I'd be okay with it.
I thought it was interesting that the first two ladies were so much older than him
Yeah.
too. That
Yeah.
it's almost like, are we replacing mom thing going
Yeah.
on psychologically here? Yeah.
Yeah.
It was that was interesting to me that he was always searching for somebody who was so much older than him at the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, his mom was a piece of work, but
Yeah.
Pauline, and then they made a comment in it about like, I mean, I think if the Pauline Hadley thing hadn't happened, if Pauline hadn't come into the picture and, they got married, I don't think he would have been the person we know, because it was kind of, her uncle that funded the safaris and funded,
yeah.
Cuba.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like,
Finally.
would we have even known, would he have even gotten to that place if it wasn't, kind of for Pauline? But they kind of at the end, when they talked about the end of their relationship, they said, like, oh, she paid for this and she did this and she did that. And it was like, well, there was also, I mean, yes, that's true. But there was also, I think, he did love her at one point. It wasn't, I don't think he just looked at her as a piggy bank. And, but
But they
But
did bring
Hadley
up too
also
where
had one,
he kind of
too.
resented that.
yeah. Yeah.
That he didn't own anything. Yeah.
Yeah, he definitely resented it. But I don't think he and Hadley, if he had gone back, I don't think he and Hadley would have stayed together, just because of, I think that relationship had a shelf life too.
But
But it is kind of, I mean, go ahead, Carol.
Didn't Hadley's inheritance also support them in
Mhm.
Paris, where they were saying, oh, they were destitute and didn't have any bread practically, but he had an inheritance that paid for, or
Yeah.
a trust fund.
Yeah. Yeah. So the first two wives basically supported him
Yeah.
until he made, started making his money, and then it was a little bit different. But he also, he really did help out, his family. He sent money to his siblings and even to his mother, who he didn't really like. But he did help out. And there's, there are quite a few stories that I've read and come across that, doesn't paint him as being such a horrible guy. When the Murphys, who he was good friends with, that they stayed in the south of France, when their sons, they had 3 children, I think it was, and the first son died, and then the second son got really sick, and Hemingway would write him these letters and be like, okay, when I just bought you a fishing rod, and when you get better, you're going to come down here, we're going to go out on the, boat, we're going to go fishing. And he would send him all these really sweet letters. And then he even went up there to go see him, and he, kept on this big brave face. And when he walked out of the room, he just sat down and started crying. And those are the stories that, they're not going to negate all of his bad things, but it's a side of him that they rarely talk about.
Yeah, sensitive.
Yeah.
And I think part of the reason his progression of anger and bad behavior was because of his increased drinking.
Yes.
And I also think that the concussions could have changed the personality of him to make him much more aggressive than he would have been otherwise.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
just those two
And I'm
things
sure it
alone.
had to be like frightening for him, because he was having this, this change in his brain and not able to write. And I'm sure that was incredibly scary. So then that's going to come out in a whole lovely
And frustrating.
way. Yeah.
Scary and frustrating. Yeah.
Yeah. But a lot of the stuff about the end of his life, they really, I mean, it's not talked about. Somebody else sent me a message and said, I didn't know any of that stuff about the hospitals. And it's not something that's, his Paris years and like the safaris and stuff. Those are the stories that most people talk about. But, the having to go to the hospital and the electric shock therapy and all of that stuff is not as commonly talked about. And
Well, it was a kind of shameful thing, like he went for his blood pressure is what the
Right.
Yeah.
story was.
Exactly. Yeah,
Hid
that's
it.
it. Yeah.
They hid it.
Yeah, so they
So-
kind of covered it up, and A.E. Hotchner, who they showed kind of towards the very end of the third episode, he was a good friend of his, and he started going down when he started to when they talked about something about a article that he wrote, and he had to have a friend edit it. Well, that story, it was A.E. Hotchner, and he was supposed to write this article with like 1,000 words or something like that. And he ended up writing like 10,000 words, but he couldn't edit it, and he was having a lot of problems. And so he had become friends with A.E. Hotchner, and Hotchner came down there to Cuba to see him. And then they became very good friends. And Hotchner actually, anytime his books would be purchased for, the stage or for a movie, he was always the one involved with the screenplay and the editing. And he would record all these conversations with Hemingway, and Hotchner put out a couple different books about it, and they're really, really good books, really interesting. But it was nice as he died 2 years ago. So, but they had him on the show, which I thought was neat. But Hotchner is also, he was the partner of Paul Newman for Newman's
Yep.
Own.
Yep.
So he created all of that. But those books that he wrote are really good. There's one he did called Hemingway in Love that kind of talks about all of that. And he waited to publish it after Mary died. Mary.
Is he the one that wrote a biography, Paul Newman, about all of that? I should look it up.
Oh, I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm
There
sure
is
he did.
a wonderful, kind biography of Paul Newman. telling
Yeah.
about
Oh,
the
I'm sure he did. Yeah. But yeah, I think they were like neighbors or something like that. But he was very close with Hemingway. So his books are really great because he, recorded conversations that they had. So, if that's another one, you're like, okay, well, this is probably pretty close to what actually was said, because you never know, with some of the things I've gotten books before, and as soon as there was one, I can't remember which, it was recently, and I opened it up and it instantly had like the dates wrong of when they moved to Paris. And I was like, yep, not going to read this. I was just like, nope, you got that wrong. I don't know what else you're going to get wrong. Yeah.
Claudine, the movie of Nicole Kidman.
Oh yeah.
So
Yeah.
that depicts the reality.
It's actually, that story's pretty close. There's this, they, the day she walked into the bar, and they always say, oh, she was wearing this tight black dress and her blonde hair and stuff. And then I was reading something, and it was like the bartender was like, yeah, it wasn't like that at all, but it sounds better. Here she's, strutting in, and, and she sees him. But that's a pretty good movie. And that's, I was just like, okay, this is pretty close. This is pretty close. Because sometimes movies, take off into a whole different direction. And if it's a movie about something historical in Paris, and then they start to get it wrong, I'm just like, I can't do this.
I thought that in the Hemingway Gellhorn movie, that she looked like Lauren Bacall.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the way she walked was like Lauren Bacall walked in To Have and Have Not. Is that the one?
Yeah.
a good one.
Not a bad person to emulate at all.
No.
Yeah, not bad at all. But yeah, I thought that was actually pretty good. And a lot of the stories, it was like, okay, these are all, this is pretty close to everything I've read about that period. But I think he was fascinated by her, but then they were just too similar. They were way too similar. And, she wanted to chase the story, which, he always wanted to do too.
Right.
But he wanted
very, very, very independent.
Mhm.
And as opposed to where they were saying how Pauline was all about, oh, whatever you want, dear, I'm going to make you happy, whatever you want. I mean, and then to go from that to an independent person.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not going to work.
Yeah. And then Mary was more like Pauline. But that's Martha has always said, she always had said that she never wanted to be a footnote in his story of just being like his wife. And so when I was watching it and they were showing that clip of I don't know what it was, from a TV show or something, and they were hunting and they were like Martha Gellhorn or Mrs. Hemingway. And I was like, oh, she probably hated that. Yeah, but that's, you know, which is understandable. I mean, she had a huge life outside of him. And so, you know, I think that was a difference, but I think all the other ones would have been fine being known as a
I
footnote
thought
in,
it must have been,
Hemingway. Yeah.
in his
not,
story.
it
But
just says what
about
the women, the status, and she went out and she covered more of that war, got to see more, got to talk about more. He talked about so much, but who got the prime spot in the magazine?
yeah,
He did.
of course.
But
Yeah.
it's because of the name Hemingway was
Yeah.
much
Well,
more
and he kind of, he screwed
popular to
her
draw
over.
people.
Mhm.
Yeah, he ended up taking, you know, he called Collier's and said, you know, that he would do this. And so then they paid him all this money and said, okay, and shipped him off to, you know, got him over there to Europe. And then essentially he kind of became her boss. And that was kind of, I think, her last straw. So, you know, because she was the one, but, you know, she was, you know, being the only woman on the beach of Normandy, and he was out on a boat out in the water and didn't make it, but he told people he was there. He told people he was there and he was on the beach. But, you know, the fact that she hid in a bathroom and then she pretended she was a paramedic just to get there. I mean,
Yeah.
just
And,
amazing.
didn't he fly and then wouldn't let her fly? And so she'd take the slow boat?
Yeah. And then she got to London and he was in the hospital, and there was like his bed was like, you know, there was empty booze bottles on her bed, and it was like a party and that's where she was just like, oh, this is, forget this. And that was,
He looked like a sultan with that bandage on his head.
yeah. But so she
Yeah.
wasn't having that. She thought, forget this.
Near the end, there was that 18-year-old girl and her mother.
Yeah.
He flew them to Cuba. What was that all about? Was he gonna try to marry her then too?
I don't know.
After-
That was really weird. I think that was also, you know, I think he was kind of starting to lose it a little, but I mean, he became like crazy obsessed with her, like infatuated with her. And, you know, I mean, what was, you know, I'm not fond of Mary, as we know, but I mean, what was she thinking? You know, she's in Italy with him, and then he's like running off and, you know, wanting to bring her back and marry her and all of this stuff. You know, he was infatuated. There was lots of women that they didn't even talk about, you know, that came in and out of the picture that he'd get infatuated with. The other thing I thought was really funny is that he was always known, a lot of times he would call these women daughter. And if you watch Hemingway and Gellhorn, he did it in that. He would call her daughter, which I always thought was really creepy, because here's these women and then you're going to have like a sexual relationship with them, but you were always calling them daughter. But they didn't mention that in the show at all.
Well, maybe
that was
his
because that would be
cover.
really creepy.
Yeah.
But they
It was kind of the time though, because I remember my dad calling my mother mom.
Yeah.
I don't know. I could never understand that. It would be like, Dad, that's my mom, not your mom.
Yeah.
I don't think that, you know, but
Yeah.
they did that. It was
about
Like-
My
his-
mother would have slapped my father if he had called her mom.
But they did talk about, and that's what we were wondering, if it was really a lot of this was a deep-seated concern on Hemingway's part about his own masculinity
Yeah.
from back in his childhood. And he would play these strange, you know, scenarios with Pauline and with Mary. And they did talk about
The
some
role
of the role
reversal.
reversals
Mm.
and all that kind of stuff. And if that added into the level of, you know,
Weirdness.
Yeah.
his
Well,
behavior.
I thought that was very interesting. They brought that up like kind of in all 3 episodes. They kind of, you know, it was just definitely something they wove through. There is a gentleman, I think his name's Pete something, but he is a, you know, quote unquote Hemingway scholar, but he says really controversial things. And he says a lot of things that aren't exactly, that are proven to not be true. And he kind of pushes some of these things and say, you know, this is true, when it's like, well, no, you know, there's proof that it's not. And that's a big thing that he's always has talked about, is that the gender fluidity that he had and all of this stuff. And I guess that Ken Burns had talked to him for the episode, for the show. So that's always kind of interesting. I mean, I think, you know, his mother dressing him up as a little girl and treating him like that. I mean, I think, you know, I don't know if that had something to do with him later in his life.
And influential time too, when he was that young.
Yeah. And but it was, I mean, he did like his wives to have this very short hair, almost like a boy, which is kind of strange. And I don't know. I mean, you know, there was also, you know, Zelda tried to start this rumor that, that he was gay and that he wanted to sleep with Fitzgerald. And, you know, so it's like, you know, who knows?
But remember, his mom used to cut his sister, who he was very close with, her hair like his, short, and a very short pixie. So maybe he was just referring back to that.
I think, I mean, his mom, like, she just did a real number. She did a real number. I mean, the way she treated his father, you know, just like completely emasculating him. And, you know, and she was the one that was making more money. And, you know, and that letter that she sent to, you know, Ernest, when she said, you know, kicking him out and saying, what, life is like a bank, and I made these deposits, and, you know, it was just
overdrawn.
like very odd. Very odd.
I mean, if they didn't actually have that writing on the page when they were, I wouldn't have believed it.
Yeah.
But then
I'll have to look in the because I have all of these. There's five
you're buying the books
from Cambridge has put
from the
these letters together.
Yeah.
Which he never wanted published, but Mary did it anyway. But you know, it's great. It's thankful to have those. But it's I'll have to see if that letter's in there. I'll have to see if it's in there. And if it is, I'll take a picture and post it.
You're overdrawn.
I thought it was interesting. She had this like Christian allusion too. Remember your salvation in Jesus Christ, but all this.
Yeah. And he wasn't really like, he was also very like anti-religious. Like, you know, Pauline.
That's probably why.
Yeah. Well, yeah, for sure. I mean, I could relate. But Pauline definitely, you know, she was very Catholic, you know, and getting him to convert. And also they used the wrong church. The pictures of the church that they had on the show I was like, that's not the church. The church, like, that's really close to it. But the church they got married in was this really small one, kind of around the corner. But, you know, he definitely, he had always, because he was never religious and he was never happy, you know, to have to do, you know, go to church, or she would never want to go with her. So I'm sure that left another seed in him.
Probably.
Yeah. It's interesting. It's interesting. I mean, we all, you know, there's all those things from our childhood that you don't think is probably a big deal at the time. And they definitely leave a mark in your life later. So I think there's a lot of stuff from his childhood that really, really got him. And then the war, going to war and coming home and not wanting to sleep, you know, not wanting to sleep by himself, then that, you know, then that turned into always having to have somebody there, finding the next person.
Yeah, love the one you're with.
Yeah.
It's too bad they didn't have PTSD treatments back then.
Yeah.
He needed it. Yeah,
for
definitely
sure.
needed it.
Yeah, I mean, I think they thought electric shock therapy maybe was that, but that definitely did not help. And he was able to kind of trick them, you know, to thinking he was okay, to get out of there and come home. So
he just wanted to get out of there.
Oh, I could relate.
You blame him. Yeah.
I could relate after recently being in the hospital. It's you know, you definitely, it's like all you think is like, get me out of here.
Yeah, get me out. Yeah.
And they weren't shocking my brain.
Thankfully.
Yeah.
But it was, I thought, you know, it was beautifully done. The music was beautiful, you know, the music and the, you know, it's Ken Burns, you know, he always does a fantastic job. The visuals and the people they had doing the voices, you know, It was
Jeff
really-
Daniels. Jeff
Mhm.
Daniels was doing Hemingway.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was really
I-
really
I
good.
Right.
love the scenes in
See
Cuba.
what?
It made me want to go there.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Me too.
I think if they ended up having somebody, if they had the guy from Midnight in Paris doing his voice, it would have been the guy was great. I mean, he was awesome, but you know, it's also like he didn't sound like that. His voice. I mean, when they
You
I mean,
said
that-
he was speaking the way that he wrote.
yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Exactly, adding to the myth. So that's what so now that's what everybody thinks he sounds like. So, you know, but
Well, and the
Like
one
the-
part that really touched me was in the second one, they had John McCain, which
yes,
shows you how long they've been working on this.
exactly.
And John McCain was reading the end of Farewell to Arms, that line, and you could see him choke up right
Yeah.
at the end because obviously he was sick at that point. He was looking
Yeah.
pretty
Yeah.
thin. And I was like, oh, wow,
Yeah.
that's pretty powerful.
Yeah, I remember at his funeral, they mentioned one of
Yeah.
the speakers
Yep.
said something about Farewell to Arms and how it was his
Well,
favorite book and
I think
stuff.
it was his daughter. I think it was
Oh,
Megan.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that was his
so-
favorite writer.
Yeah, my mom
Oh.
was like, "Why was John McCain in there?" And so I was just like, "Well, you know, that was his favorite book." But yeah, the same thing. I was like, they obviously were working on this for a long time because Hotchner
Yeah.
died 2 years ago, and
Yep.
McCain died what 2 or 3 years ago.
Two and a half. Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
they
Yeah,
definitely
I
were
think
working
6
on this.
years.
Wow.
I think they've worked on it for 6
Yeah.
years.
Oh my. Wow. Okay.
Well, they work on a number, you
Oh.
know, they're always working on a number
Yeah.
of things.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
was
saw him
watching
do
all
an
of
interview.
those-
He said he was doing 10 things at a time or something.
Yeah, I was watching a few of those the talks they were doing the weeks before. I
Mhm.
watched the first few until
Right.
I was starting to get sick, and they were saying how they were, you know, working on multiple things at a time, but they have, you know, quite a few people. You know, it's not just
Right,
Ken.
yeah.
I don't think like for me, I couldn't do that. If I couldn't be researching 3 different walks at the same time, it would just be a mess.
Right.
But he has people.
Yeah.
Yes, he does.
Yeah. He has lots of people. Yeah. But I mean, he does such a great job. He does such a great job telling a story. So
Well,
it
let's
was
give
a-
Lynn Novick credit also.
Yes,
Down.
for
We
sure.
always say Ken Burns, but she's right there too.
Yeah, it was both of them that did it. So yeah, they did a really great job. It's got to be such a relief when they finally get it done and it's on the screen, you know. It's
Mhm.
when you're
Yes.
working on a project for that long, it's got to be like,
Yeah.
okay, it's done now.
Yeah. Can
Gotta
you
be.
imagine a 6-year project? I can't imagine.
I can't. That would
That's
be
a long time.
Mhm.
be a lot, and all of the different people you're talking to and the research, and you know, I'm sure they have a team of people that are just doing research, you know, on stuff. But
Well, and they have us come along and say, well, how come you didn't say this? And how come you didn't do that?
Mhm.
Yeah, Claudine, why aren't you a historical researcher?
I
for
know they
this?
didn't call me. I think I'm gonna send him some notes. I'm gonna say, listen.
A lot on the cutting.
They'll help.
board, too.
They'll include you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to be one of those literary scholars.
Oh, you're a Hemingway scholar. You know.
There you go. I know. When I was in the hospital, it was really funny. They were like, "Oh, I see on here it says that you're a writer." He goes, "And your last name's Hemingway. Like that's that's a funny coincidence." And I go, "Well, actually." And he's like, "Oh goodness." And then the next day somebody said, "Somebody told me that you were related to Hemingway." And then they spelled my name with 2 M's.
Oh,
And so
Oh.
one day I went on a walk and I came back and I saw it on the thing and I said, "Could you please fix that?"
Fix
But my
mine.
file has 2 M's. And so I need to call, and they were like, "Well, it's really hard. We're
Oh,
going
my.
to merge the records and do all this stuff." And I was like,
Oh my.
"But I
Yeah.
didn't spell it wrong. I didn't spell it."
Exactly.
Is your birth certificate right? You know.
Yeah. It has 1 M on there.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, it was kind of funny. It was pretty funny that they were like, "Oh," they're like, "Funny that you're a writer and your last name's Hemingway."
Not so funny, really.
Runs in the family.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, is
I
it
know, I should've
life
gotten really
imitating
angry.
art or art imitating life? Which one is it?
I should have gotten really angry and started yelling at him.
Yeah.
Demand champagne.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Bring me my bourbon. Yeah. But yeah, it was I thought I thought it was really good. It was really excited to finally see it, for months and months, they've been talking about it. It felt like it was forever, but then it was all of a sudden it was on, and it was really good. It was nice to see the time they put into it. And I was actually kind of surprised that they really glanced over. I mean, they really sped over the Paris years in Hadley. Like they didn't go into that as much as you kind of would think they would. It was just kind of just a blip. And then it went into like, Pauline and going to Cuba or going to Key West. I thought that was actually pretty interesting. I thought, but that's also the period that most people know, but I thought I was just like, I was just surprised they didn't do that more, go into it more.
Yeah, me too, actually.
Well, maybe that would be more entangled with all the other artists and their errors and getting clearance, and I don't know.
It could have been that they thought that the other part was more interesting and people would hold their interest more with the Pauline part rather than the Hadley, because not many people really knew about her. Yeah,
and then, even at the start, they were talking about, it went in really quickly into it, meeting Hadley instead of, he moved to Chicago and he was living in this, small apartment on Dearborn, and then and then he was at a party. It was like, he was in Chicago, and then he fell in love with Hadley, and it was like, whoa,
got married, and all of a sudden they're in Paris. Yeah.
It was very quickly, not talking about how he almost missed his wedding and he was late and all of these other stories. It was like they got married, and then now they're in Paris, and here comes Bumby. It was like, did I fall asleep for a few minutes? We went through that really quickly.
Editing room.
They were trying to make the point that his life experiences went into the novels.
Yes, definitely.
And so, he wasn't having those kinds of life experiences until he went to Spain.
Yeah. And he definitely
and
was
then
always...
when he wrote A Movable Feast, of course, he didn't write that until he was in his 50s, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, he wrote it from notes he had taken, but that was much later than the Paris years themselves.
Yeah, and he would never write about the place he was living in at the time. So when he was in Paris, that's when he was writing about Chicago, like all the stuff in Michigan. And then, when he was back in, Cuba, then he would write about Spain, or, it was funny because it's like, he would never write about the place that he was living at the time. It was always about someplace else after he experienced it. But, I think once he started, I mean, and it's addictive. I mean, we know, because we all love to travel and really want to get out of here, but it's like, it's addictive going and exploring new places and finding new things. And, when I come back to Portland, I'm like, this is so boring. There's nothing to see or no museums, there's nothing good. It's like, you just want to keep finding that.
Idea.
It's like a drug. You want to find that next thing. Yeah. It's boring here, Coretta. I don't ever leave the house, but I'll come to San Francisco and see Don and Carol.
There you go.
Hey, it's always interesting around here.
That's true. Yeah.
We're open up now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it's true. You are. But I think that, once he started doing that a couple times, then of course you want to just keep doing it. You don't want to stop, we could all understand how that goes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where are we going next?
I know. I just want to go to the
So I
airport.
started thinking about my trip to Spain a few years ago, thinking, I wonder if I was in one of the bars that he went to.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and then I'm sure Paris does it, that, in Spain, they maybe do it too. It's kind of like, you go back east and George Washington slept here. When in Paris, everybody wants to say, oh, Hemingway ate here, or Hemingway did this. And you'll find it on menus, oh, Picasso and Hemingway and everything. And it's like, yeah, anybody could say that. So, but
in Madrid, they have close to Plaza Mayor, they have a restaurant there. There's a plaque and it says, no, Hemingway did not eat here.
Yeah.
That's
Have you
hilarious.
seen that? It was so hilarious. It's like,
That is so
okay.
funny. Yeah, no, he
Yeah.
did not.
No.
Yeah.
Eat that.
Was it? And here I was in Key West almost 20 years ago. I can't believe it's been that long. And of course, everybody went to Sloppy Joe's, but nobody knew the history of the place. It was just
Oh.
the bar to go to on Duval Street.
Huh.
So, but yeah, there's Sloppy Joe's right there on Duval, and
Yep, I've been there.
I
I
haven't been
went to the
back.
house
It was
Wow.
19 years ago now. I can't believe it's been
More
that
than
long.
20 years.
Yeah. I mean,
I
that
know.
Sloppy Joe's is definitely tied to him. I mean, that's definitely one where it's like, yes, he did go
Yeah,
there.
and it's still there.
Yeah.
It's the bar on Duval Street that all the sailors go to. Believe me.
Yeah. Do they have a sign in there that says, do they have a plaque or anything?
I didn't go in because
Oh.
I'm one of those people that wants to stay away from where all the crowds go.
Yeah.
So I went to other places.
Yeah.
There you go.
We'll have to like
Mhm.
Google Earth it and see if we could get it, see inside and see if they do. But like
Yeah.
Closerie de Lila, losing my mind. They have, a plaque on the bar, but he didn't sit at the bar. He sat at a table, where he was writing, and they have pictures up there. And when I went there to go see it, and I was walking back from I think the Liberation Museum, which is a cool, really awesome one to go see.
Yeah.
And I was coming back, and I thought, oh, well, I have time. I'll go in there. It was like, 4:30 or something. And I was taking pictures of it, and they were like, oh, Ernest Hemingway, oh, you know him? He sat there. And I was like, no, he didn't. I didn't say that. I just was like, oh, okay. And took pictures and stuff. And,
Well, Steve has been trying to get me to go back down to Key West. And so if we get back down there, I will make a point to go into Sloppy Joe's and see if there's
Yes.
anything in there saying.
yeah, go
Hemingway.
see. It'd be interesting to see if they, have something, if they're trying to capitalize on that a little bit.
Yeah.
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 I would think.
Well, I know
would
they
have
do
something.
because they actually use his face,
Oh.
like a kind of a drawing of his face
Uh-huh.
as one of the logos. So
Oh.
I know they're trying to.
Oh
but-
yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Key West does a lot of stuff. I guess they also do like a look-alike contest. And
Yeah.
I saw
Probably,
something about it
yeah.
online, and it's really creepy. I mean, some of these people, it's always him later and, when he's older
Yeah.
and gray. But some of them, it's like creepy. I mean, they look a lot like him.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But
His
he's
house-
gotta be,
house-
you gotta be an old guy with a
They
beard
have-
and squinty eyes.
Yeah. They need to have the young, handsome guy look-alike contest. I'll be right there.
Right.
I'll volunteer to judge.
I was gonna say his house in Key West where he stayed with Pauline. It's very interesting, and they say that the cats are
The same
cats.
Yes,
from
they
the-
are. They're descendants. Yeah.
descendants from the ones that he kept.
The
Because he had
polydactyl.
both cats.
Yeah.
6 toes.
Right.
With the 6 toes.
And that was the first swimming pool in Key West.
Is that
Wow.
Carol screaming in the background?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and there's a penny or something in next to the pool. They have a penny or something that a friend of mine was down there, and she was gonna go to it. And so I was like, you have to send me a picture. I want to see. And I can't remember the exact story, if it was like he put it in there and it's like covered with resin or something like that, and it's next to the pool.
It was just, for me, it was interesting because of the polydactyl cats that are
Yeah.
descendants. The people, the docents and everything take care of them, but years later, I ended up adopting a pair of polydactyl cats.
Mhm.
And it was
2 of them. Oh, wow.
back to going to Key West because they just roam freely throughout the estate.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, they do.
It's just interesting and that here was a man who seemed so harsh, but he had so many animals. He had
Yeah.
so many cats and dogs,
Yeah, I had the whole list. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's interesting he was a cat person. I mean, you wouldn't think
No.
his personality would then be a cat person. Like you would think his personality would be like a Doberman or a big dog of some sort, not these cats that have 6 toes.
Right.
Weird
Rottweiler.
cat.
Yeah, a
And not
Rottweiler.
someone
Yeah,
who
more of a
shot
Rottweiler.
Not somebody who would go shoot lions either. I mean, it's,
Ugh, those pictures.
Yeah.
I
like,
know. I hate the the killing that way.
Yeah, that was, I mean, it was that, obviously, I don't think it was frowned upon as much as it is now back then. but
Right, yeah.
that was just like, I did not care for that. And seeing that great big sweet beautiful lion and all of those different animals and how they were using it as a contest to see who could get the most, it
Oh,
was
yeah.
just, that was
Yeah.
just really gross.
That and the bullfighting too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm.
Oh, I meant to tell you that my very first place I ever went to in Spain was in Ronda, which was the place that he loved to go. Besides Pamplona, apparently he loved to go hang out in Ronda,
Oh,
Yeah.
bullfights.
which
I
is
was
a
for
for
fishing?
and they have a bullfighting ring, and it's a
Yep.
really interesting place.
Yeah.
And I had no idea when I was going. I just kind of showed up there, and they started talking about Hemingway. I was like,
Oh.
oh, okay.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, the bullfights, I
Yeah.
mean, I could see like, because he talks about the beauty of it. And I could see at the beginning of it, when the guys and he's like, has his, cape and he's moving, it's like, it is kind of this dance. But then as soon as it turns into this brutal thing, and it's just disgust. It's not. I mean, in France they do it, but they don't kill.
Right.
It wasn't that they killed them. It was just more of a, a fight again with them, but they didn't do anything like they do in Spain. And they still do it, don't they?
I'm not
I
sure
don't
if
know.
they kill them.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think
Yeah, they still do.
Yeah,
They
they
still
do.
do.
Modified.
In
Yeah.
Portugal, they don't.
Yeah. And then the idiots that run through the streets with them.
No.
Nope. That's another thing I'm not putting on my list to do.
No thanks.
The
They
Darwin
would see me in all
Awards.
my red and my red lipstick and I'd be dead.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
He'd be running after you.
I know. Yeah.
Alone.
Nope.
There
not-
she
not-
is.
that is not on my bucket list either. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
I don't even want to see, I didn't want to watch it. I mean, I have this thing about people being hurt.
yeah.
So yeah, somebody gets gored and flung and I'd be like,
Those people are just absolutely nuts that do that. And then you watch them getting run over and the bull is like running over them. Like those things are big. That can't be
Yeah.
good on your, on your
anything.
innards. It's not good, but
Sure.
yeah. Well, look, it's already been so long keeping you guys all, and on the East Coast, it's so late.
Yeah. I was gonna say, we're gonna go.
Yeah.
It's 9:15.
It's
Yeah,
not terrible.
thank you guys all so much
Thank
for
you. Thank you
joining
so
today
much.
and chatting about it. And it's really fun to be able to talk about it with other people and what they thought of it and everything. And then, some of you will still need to finish it. I probably would have
One
taken
more.
2 weeks to finish it if I didn't need to finish it by today.
Right.
I would have, I'd fall asleep and then, it takes me a couple days.
We stayed awake through all three of them.
We were
Oh.
so
Me
proud.
too.
You guys are night owls.
Right.
I was like, that goes till 10 o'clock. I can't make it.
Well,
I
and
didn't have
PBS, if you
big
fell
day
asleep on the
today.
early one, you pick it up on the second one.
Yeah, I did
Yeah.
actually. I think I woke up, I'd fall asleep and then I'd wake up before it was over, or I'd catch it. Maybe I'd wake up and the TV was still on and it was on the next episode. But I ended
Like
up.
me in West Wing.
Yeah,
I do that with West Wing all the time. I'd say fall asleep watching.
yeah, but that's okay. We've seen it a million times.
Yes, exactly.
Well, we can continue the discussion in Paris before the end of the year.
I know. We'll all
probably.
meet in Paris. We'll go to the bar Hemingway. We'll take over the bar Hemingway.
Yes.
And
That's
we'll have we could all as a group tackle the 51 martini.
Absolutely.
There we go.
Totally.
No.
Okay.
They said
so that's
50 in the show. I was like, it was 51.
Okay, if we get
Ah.
25 people, well, even with 12, I mean, that's just 4 apiece or so.
Yeah.
Dude.
I'm not a martini
Oh,
drinker,
12,
so
yeah.
I'm gonna have to train up for
not
that.
either.
In the bar. You couldn't get
We
that
can-
many
we-
people in the bar.
That's true.
can
Yeah.
call
So
Colin.
Uh-oh.
Debbie, Ron, and I we've been there together
Been there together.
once or twice. At least
Oh,
once.
it's that small. Really?
Yeah,
It's very small.
Oh, wow.
What
Yeah.
bar are you talking about right now?
The bar Hemingway that's in the Ritz.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's probably capacity is about 30 to 40, isn't it?
Yeah, it's small. It's very small. So we could take over the whole place.
Right.
There we go.
Just call
Right.
Colin.
Yeah, we'll call Colin and tell him we're coming. Yeah.
Yeah.
Then every drink is
Hemingway
29
party.
euros, so save up.
I know.
More than that by the time we get back.
I know,
Oh, no
it's probably gonna be 39 euros and yeah, but it's you know,
For
it's
a
worth it to
drink?
go there and have at least one.
Do
You
there
know, if you're ever
once,
there and you
yeah.
haven't been, go and at least have one and check it out. Get there about 5:30 and wait. Oh, sorry, I don't want to
You're
share the
giving out the
secret.
secrets.
Lots of celebrities
It's only
too,
us.
right?
It's
So,
only
like,
us. It's
I
not
know
the
it's
world.
only us. Yeah. But yeah, it isn't big. It's pretty small.
mhm.
So yeah. Or we get a
But
bottle
was
of
Caesar-
champagne, it's like $500, 500 euros.
I don't.
What's
that was
500
what our
euros?
tab was.
A bottle of
Yeah.
champagne. I think
Oh my God.
Debbie, I think when we were there was somebody that we kept seeing, it was this couple and they kept ordering bottles of champagne. And we were like, oh my gosh. And then I think we got a menu and looked and it was like, you know, I think it was like 500 or 600 euros a bottle.
Oh my.
They're loaded.
Yeah.
But the rose was free.
And the rose, you get
surprised.
the ladies get the rose in your drink. And it harkens back to the fact that when he went to go liberate the Ritz, it was actually the bar across the hall. The bar that's now the bar Hemingway was the ladies' bar. So he actually
That's
wasn't
right.
in that one.
Yep.
And so that's why all the ladies get a rose or a flower in their drink, because it's a nice little tie back to the fact that it was the ladies' bar. And then I always try to save them. And by the end of the night, by the time I get back to my apartment, it's trashed. I put it in my purse or I try to save it and it just falls apart. But it's a fun little thing that they do for people.
One of these days, you have to save one and press it.
Yes.
It's your bar Hemingway flower.
Yeah, I do too. I have a few of the menus. There's actually one in a frame back there, but the first time I ever went there, because my grandparents went there, and then when they paid, they were like, "Oh, Monsieur Hemingway," you know, and so they ended up giving my grandpa this like an ashtray, but it doesn't say anything on it, which is like, well, that's not, you know, I wish it said Bar Hemingway. And so when I went and I was just like, oh, and I was like, je suis Hemingway. And I was like, oh, you know, I was like, can I, you know, I was holding, you know, holding the menu like it was like, you know, this treasure. And I was asking, I was like, can I have this? And they were like, €5. And I was like, oh. So
You can go to
I
the
was just like,
souvenir
come
shop.
on.
Yeah.
Yeah, they didn't really
I can't
care.
believe they're selling that.
They didn't really care. But since then, I've been a little bit more crafty with getting the menu. But it is kind of neat because they change them. I think they change them a couple times of the year, and they have little like stories, and they'll have like, you know, the book of the book, you know, have something about his books and little stories and stuff. And it looks like a newspaper. So it's kind of a neat little thing to keep. You know.
We were gonna walk out of St. Regis with a cup, and we didn't. We paid, was it $2?
I love that place.
They were 19 apiece.
Oh, 19
euros a piece.
$19 or whatever a piece, and we bought 2 of them.
I would love to have one of. I need to get one of those next time, because who doesn't love Cafe Saint Regis? So that's such a
Love
great
it.
place. And Debbie and Ron love to go there for what is it? Which pasta is it?
Bolognese.
Yes. But late night.
Debbie Ann gets the chicken marsala, I think.
Oh yeah, no, it's chicken. Yeah. And the frites and champagne. Gotta always have those.
Yeah, Mike gets the hamburger and Fritz.
Yeah, it's such a perfect little place. So great.
They make the best Aperol spritz I've ever had.
Oh,
What was the name of the place?
Saint Regis.
Saint Regis.
yeah, it's at the very tip of Ile Saint Louis, looking towards Notre Dame.
Okay.
Yeah,
Right across the bridge.
right across there. Can't miss it. There's always somebody taking photos of themselves at the tables out front.
And
Yeah.
if you go there every day in the morning like we did, they know your name.
Mhm.
By the end, we had a reserved table because you always walked in at the same time.
Perfect.
Told them, we had to tell them tomorrow we're leaving, so we won't be there. We sang songs and stuff
Yeah.
like that.
It's good to
Were
have
you
those
staying on the
places.
island?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, we'll all be back soon
Yes.
Oh, I hope.
to get it together over there.
Claudine, it's so good to see you tonight.
The what?
It's so good to see you tonight.
Oh, thank you so much. It's so great to see all you guys. It's been a few weeks, but I feel better every single day, and the medicine is working. The doctor said they're really happy that I've taken to it so well, so quickly. So other than being a little tired, but I think that's just kind of my usual state, is always just a little tired. So, but I'm definitely feeling much better every single day. And I
Good.
appreciate
So good.
all of the amazing, wonderful, sweet messages from people. It's all been very overwhelming and usually has me in tears every time I read one. So I really appreciate it, and they all really help.
All right. We're gonna go.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining me. And then this Sunday, we're going to do around Jardin des Plantes, and around the garden, and then outside, and we're going to go to the arena, the Roman arena that's still there. So we're going to go check that out, and hopefully we'll have lots of beautiful blooms that we could see. And then I'm also doing on Sunday another video about the statues in the Luxembourg Garden, the 20 illustrious ladies. So I'm also going to do that one on Sunday. So there's
Oh, I know
lots
that
of
one.
chances to see me.
All right. Perfect. Have a
All
good
right.
night.
Well, thank you guys all so much, and you guys
Thank
enjoy
you.
your evening. And it was wonderful to see all of you. And thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.